What's good, everybody? It is time for your Surrey real estate market update. And there is a ton of just crazy stuff, quite frankly, going on in Surrey real estate. So I'm really thankful for you joining me today. And without further ado, let's just kind of jump right into it and chat a little bit about what's happening. So before I get into all of that, I want to explain the numbers that we're going to be using in today's presentation. So they're from something called the home price index. And what is the home price index? Well, it tracks the value of a typical home. So not a literally a real house, but a what we're calling a typical house. That's a home that has consistent features across the board that never really change. So it watches how that value will change over time. I want you to think about this a little bit almost like inflation. It's almost like tracking the inflationary numbers for housing. So, is those numbers getting a little bit more expensive, or are they actually coming down each and every month, or, what's really happening with that? So it's our very best tool that we have. It is put together by very brilliant people at the University of British Columbia for us, and it is our best tool to really get a good idea of what's happening with housing. So without further ado, let's talk about the market as a whole to get really started here. So what you can see is listings really for the portion of where we are in 2025 are at an all-time high. You can see it's a very far bar, blue bar on the very right there. And sales are pretty historically low. They're quite down. And this is, of course, across the entire Fraser Valley, which is like North Delta all the way to Chilliwack, basically. But you can see sales are quite down in comparison. And we've kind of been living in this world now of really low sales for about 3 years, but listings have really increased. So lots of opportunity for people to go shopping out there. And this has had an impact on what has happened with the benchmark prices. Now, this is all types of property. So it's like kind of detached and condos and townhomes all filled into one. But what you're going to see is really since about the spring of this year, where we all know what happened in the spring of this year, but prices have just really slowly kind of come down since then. And the red line that you're seeing on your screen represents the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board, which is like Whistler all the way down to like Burnaby and New Westminster, and Richmond's included in that and all that sort of stuff. And then the blue is Fraser Valley. So that's a little bit of a holistic look at everything that's going on. But speaking specifically what's going on in Surrey, so condominiums, this is really the graph that I'm usually paying the most attention to. This is the one I care most about as a real estate professional when I'm helping guide my clients into making decisions, whether it is to, maybe try and time the market and wait a little bit, or, they're selling their house and what should they expect, that sort of thing. And this really tells me just how many people out there are actually shopping for properties versus how many of those properties are being sold or removed from the market. So this is the sales to active ratio. And what you can see is the red line here represents what we call a balanced market. So condominiums in the city of Surrey are actually below that. They're coming in anywhere between 11 to 12% right now, which is roughly about 1 out of 9 properties that are transacting in the market are actually selling. That means we're in a buyer's market condition. That has an impact on pricing, of course. So you're going to see, and really since the start of 2024, but even over the course of 2025, just looks what's happened to the prices of condominiums. Now, all neighborhoods are different. There's something called, micro markets or niche markets. We're talking about the whole area of Surrey here. We're not talking about like Guildford high-rise condos specifically, but just generally speaking, using the benchmark price, this shows us that the prices have come down quite a bit. So putting that into perspective, in the last month, they've come down about excuse me, $2,200. We're missing a dollar sign there. And in the last year, they're down about $32,000. So obviously that presents some really good opportunity for buyers being in a buyer's market or a buyer's market advantage market. Now, anecdotally, we're starting to notice that a lot of the lower end buyers, the ones that have, price points anywhere between like, let's say 400 to 700,000, a lot of those people seem to be coming out of the woodwork a little bit now. And, I couldn't tell you why. I'm not sure why that's happening, but that seems to be the kind of the story on the ground from a lot of the realtors that I'm speaking with anyways. So this will be a really interesting market to continue to watch. I've had this in my slide deck for the last few versions of this video, but be very careful in trying to time the market if you're a first-time home buyer, especially. You are still paying rent, and if you are planning on getting on the market, when the market is softening, we're not usually talking about huge numbers here. So even thinking about $32,000 change over the last 12 months, well, that number could change any day. But also remember, you're likely paying rent somewhere else, so you could easily be paying $32,000 a year in rent as well. So So, that money could be going towards a property, could be going to paying down your equity, and could be going down to owning that home a little bit sooner. Maybe you only have 24 years left on your 25-year mortgage had you have started 12 months ago. So take that into consideration. You're going to have to decide what's good for your own situation. We've talked lots about the new construction being really quite stalled on this YouTube channel, and that continues to be the case. There's lots of articles coming out about developers being in further trouble all across the city and the lower mainland, and that's not going to change. So that will create a big lull in new construction properties being available in the next 2 or 3 years. So something to keep in mind. And if you are watching this video and you're a home seller, I mean, pricing it right, especially if you've got a condominium, really matters right now. So we did a video on that on our channel about how to kind of, gauge that and figure that out. So definitely go check that out. But if you're not priced right, you ain't going anywhere right now. Getting into townhomes in the city of Surrey, you can see we're actually in a balanced market. So we're just kind of teetering on that about 15% sales to active, which is about 1 out of 6 homes that are coming to the market. And I know that doesn't sound overly exciting. 1 out of 6 doesn't sound great, but 1 out of 6 is actually still what we would consider to be in a relatively healthy market condition. Now, this market has not been without its challenges either. So you can see what's happened to the benchmark price of townhomes in, city of Surrey combined as well here. And again, since about the spring of 2025, you really see that kind of hump start to come down. So we have been losing value in our townhomes, generally speaking, across the board. In the last month, they are down about $13,000, as you can see. And in the last year, they're down about $38,000. So it's been quite the change for townhomes over the course of the last 12 months, obviously. This again, although we have seen prices come down, the numbers, just a bit based on what's available versus what's transacting, does show me that there's really no advantage to either party right now in this market. Now, you could argue that buyers maybe do have a little bit more of an advantage, but certainly by judging by the amount of inventory that's available and the amount of people that are actually buying those places, that might not last very long because the numbers don't suggest that's what's actually happening out there. So we are in a balanced market. This will be the market to continue to pay attention to. It's the only market that offers that affordability that people really crave and need right now, but it also gives them the space that they need. So it's not a one-bedroom condo. Families can't live in one-bedroom condos. So it does offer the space and the affordability for many, many people, and especially generationally, the millennial generation is needing both of those to be able to get into real estate. So this will be a fun one to continue to watch. And I don't expect prices to continue dropping like they have been. So we'll have to definitely keep an eye on that. Getting into the detached market. Now you can see this big, thick red bar here. The reason that's so big and thick is because the market is so far below a balanced market right now for detached homes in Surrey. It's wild to think about. So what you can see here is it's floating just above the 8% sales to active. That's roughly about 1 out of 12 homes, detached homes specifically in the city of Surrey actually transacting. And we've been down here for a while, guys. So that's had a big, big impact on prices. And this is a much bigger stretch of numbers compared to the other two that I've shown you. So again, very similar. It was something that happened in the fall of this year, or pardon me, the spring of this year. And you can see just really how much they've come down over the last couple months. So in the last month, it's looking like they're down just about $11,000, give or take, according to the home price index, and down over $100,000 year over year. Interesting, if you kind of look at where we were at this time last year, we were kind of just starting to come down the hump where it was going to balance itself out and maybe, poke up again a little bit. But, it'd be fun to watch and see what happens with this as well. I think many of us probably know exactly why that spring market did what it did. And we'll have to continue to watch that to see if that moves forward like that or not in continuance. So the advantage here is clearly in the buyer's favor. There is incredible amounts of inventory to choose from. Days on market is very high. Properties are sitting around a lot longer, and the market is no joke. I mean, if you're trying to sell your home right now, you know how difficult it is to actually get an offer on the table, especially an offer that looks somewhat attractive. So pricing it right absolutely matters. If you're not priced right, there's not much point in even putting your home on the market. Prices in this area are going to remain challenged. I certainly don't see us getting out of this tomorrow sort of thing. If that lower end buyer, that first time buyer does start picking up a lot more, let's say condominiums, as I was suggesting earlier in the video, that could start knocking down some of the dominoes into townhomes and into detached homes. Those first time buyers really help get the market started rather. So if that does happen, that'll be something to watch out for as well. I like to end these videos as well with a little bit about what's going on with market drivers. So Mortgage rates, we had a mortgage rate announcement a couple weeks back. Nothing happened, as you likely know. And I mean, the reports are all over the place whether we're even going to see another rate decrease in the next, by the end of the year, sort of thing. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But that can certainly impact things. One thing I would suggest, though, is really if you are kind of thinking that mortgage rates are going to make a really big difference, you're going to want to understand the relationship about how variable rates can change versus how fixed rates can change, because they don't move in congruence to each other. So you're going to want to understand that, because most people, in fact, do take a 5-year mortgage. So we've got videos on our YouTube channel about that. So check those out if you're kind of curious about that. Economic shifts, US deal, we've been talking about that a little bit as well. Nothing quite yet, and we'll have to see what happens. But, I think the impact of what the US has been a little lessened than what we probably thought it was going to be in Canada. And, I'm kind of wondering if some of that market activity I was talking about earlier is starting to come because people are getting maybe a little more comfortable with our new reality. Maybe the economy didn't get hit quite as bad as we thought it was going to. So we'll have to see if that kind of, good feeling and goodwill continues on into the coming months, especially in the fall market, which tends to be the second busiest market of the real estate season. Demand, we know the demand is there. Lots of videos on our channel about that. Seasonal trends, just kind of let you know, the fall market is typically the second busiest, so we'll see what happens. And local policy changes. We're in British Columbia, folks. There's always lots going on there, but nothing on the radar, at least quite yet. There was a really, really big announcement, and you're gonna have to stay tuned to the channel for the more on this. But there was something to do with Aboriginal title to some lands in the Richmond area, and it's a really, really big deal, and it's one that deserves everybody's attention. So I will be releasing a video on that probably in the coming days or weeks, but you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed for that one, and you don't want to miss it because it's a really, really big deal. So anyways, that's it. If you have any questions, need any help or anything like that, you've got my contact information in the description below. We'd love to help you get into your next home, talk about your current home, or how we can get you into your next home out of your current home, and do it all in a very fashionable way to make sure you're maximizing the amount of money that you sell for, and also buying something that you love for a really reasonable or even great price on the other side. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month. Cheers.